I don't know about you guys, but I've spent the last few weeks hanging about on Steam, really looking for anything worth getting excited about. And it turns out there's actually a ridiculous amount of cool games hiding beneath the surface.
Show me.
So today, I'm going to be looking at upcoming games that probably aren't even on your radar, but absolutely should be. From weird abstract games, retro shooters, immersive sims, through to survival horror. Basically the kind of stuff that reminds you that PC gaming is still pretty awesome. This isn't some kind of definitive list of every release coming out either, it's just 10 games I really can't wait to play. So having said that, let's get into it. If only so I got a reason to drag myself away from playing Megabox. Before I get too far into things though, I do need to thank today's sponsor, Zenless Zone Zero. Now if you haven't heard of Zenless Zone Zero, it's an action RPG from HoYoverse with a big focus on fast, stylish combat and sleek animation, all set in a really unique urban fantasy world, where you build this team of distinct characters, you chain together flashy combos, uncover the game's story, and generally beat the hell out of some pretty nasty monsters. It's got a great visual style and some genuinely satisfying combat, which is where the game really shines. Being fast and responsive with a focus on perfectly timed dodges, parries and assists that make every fight feel fluid and impactful. And as you unlock more characters, you can experiment with different team compositions and abilities, giving it plenty of depth if you enjoy mastering combat systems rather than just mindless button mashing. If that sounds good, well, now's the perfect time to jump right in, because version 3.1 is celebrating the game's second anniversary, with the biggest free reward package it's ever had, with new and returning players able to claim a free selectable S-Rank agent, a free S-Rank W engine, plenty of free pulls, polychromes, and anniversary cosmetics just by logging in. The headline edition is Ramiel the Void Hunter. Now, she's an all-new agent wielding a multi-form lightsaber that comes packed with some gorgeous visual effects, making her one of the flashiest characters they've released yet. And on top of all of that stuff, there's also this big summer event with new swimsuit skins, even more story content to dive into, and the first tease of an upcoming Honkai Star Rail crossover. So if you've been meaning to give Zenless Zone Zero a try, or maybe you've been away for a while, well, this is the best time to jump back in. So check it out through the link in the video description or the pinned comment. And yeah, once again, thanks to Zenless Zone Zero for sponsoring this video. Well, we're definitely kicking things off with what's probably the most unique game in this entire video, and that's About Fishing, developed by the aptly named The Water Museum. The best way to sum this one up is if Twin Peaks was combined with PS1 visuals and a fishing sim. Right from the opening, it's got a super weird vibe. You're playing as this little girl out fishing with her granddad, with the reward of a bunch of curly fries if she manages to catch enough fish. Introducing the game's easy-to-grasp mechanics, where you cast out by swiping the mouse in different directions, and then defy the laws of physics as you manually control your hook in mid-air before it lands in the water. Then simply wait for a fish to bite on before you reel them back in, making sure the line doesn't go red or else they're going to break free. Followed by treating them with the utmost care. After you've caught a couple of these and had a few more conversations with your granddad, you end up controlling a fish and then swimming underwater and coming across the body of a little girl that, along with her sister, went missing weeks ago. Yeah, this is all in the first 10 minutes of the game, by the way. Then kicking off this whole murder mystery as it jumps forward in time, with your character now an adult and trying to prove her granddad's innocence. Though you'll probably spend more time fishing than you will trying to get that old codger out of jail, simply because this whole fishing aspect is super addictive. You can sell the fish you've caught to some dude at town and spend the cash on new gear. There's a minigame where you can fillet fish with a knife to increase their value, along with this whole resource management aspect, juggling stuff around in this very RE4 inspired inventory. Side content has you rescuing some poor lady's goldfish from a bird nest, along with flinging a line into a nearby porta potty, dodging floaters to find a hidden key.
Tough time never lasts. Only tough people last.
And I reckon that I spent 90% of the demo just mucking about with this stuff alone, completely forgetting about that murder mystery I was supposed to solve. I will say one thing though, in that when I got back on track, it definitely left me wanting to get some answers, and really find out what the hell's going on here. If only to uncover what this game's obsession is with curly fries. Not sure how long we'll have to wait though, considering there's not even any kind of release date given to it at all, with it just being listed as available in 2026. Either way though, About Fishing is true to its namesake, but also being a title that barely scratches the surface of the absolutely insane shit going on here. I don't actually know if we're entering a new era here of GoldenEye and Perfect Dark clones, but either way, I'm all for it. And the next game in the video, Agent 64, Spies Never Die, is definitely one that falls into that category. In fact, you don't even need to play this one for all that long to instantly see where it takes its influences. With a very familiar looking opening mission set in some kind of high-rise building, where your character, Agent John Walter, is under attack and has to escape. You got a silenced pistol as your starting weapon, which feels a lot like the Falcon from Perfect Dark. And the SMG you very quickly get after that is more or less the CMP as well. Both of which can be manually aimed, bringing a little crosshair up for extra accuracy. You've got that familiar knockback effect when you're hit by bullets, and you can shoot apart practically every object, including things like wooden crates, which still bizarrely explode as if they're full of nitroglycerin. Along with that, the difficulty mode you choose affects the deadliness of enemies, but then also the amount of objectives you're given. And if you die at any time, it's an entire mission restart, with there being no checkpoints at all. In fact, you're lucky if you manage to find a single armor pickup during the entire level. These are positive features. Overall, this thing just instantly captures that tone that it's going for. The visuals have got that blocky, simplistic look when it comes to character models and weapons. There's just the right amount of sway when moving around, and a high amount of texture filtering on every surface. Even the little over-the-top dodge roll the enemies do looks like the same animations from GoldenEye and Perfect Dark. All up in the demo, you've got 2 levels. The first one where you're just trying to make it out of John's apartment and get to a nearby elevator, dropping a tracking beacon on a chopper and trying to avoid getting killed. With the second level having you rescue a bunch of hostages, before then making it to the ground floor and escaping the tower. Also giving you a far more effective assault rifle in this stage too. All coming to an end as your character's captured and hauled off. So yeah, overall, good shit. And the good news is that we don't have to wait too long for this one either, with a release date of the 11th of August. And with there being 14 levels in total, co-op mode, split-screen multiplayer, and no doubt a shitload of other things to unlock, there's definitely going to be a whole lot of value here. Now we're returning to the world of survival horror with the upcoming Faithless Water, developed by December Blues Games, which takes the relatively underrated premise of a horror game set deep underwater. Yeah, it's like, imagine classic Resident Evil, but at the bottom of the ocean and you're on the right page. You're playing as an unnamed character waking up from cryostasis after some kind of biological incident that's either mutated or killed the survivors of this underwater station. And after getting a snazzy new outfit and exploring, you come across horrific monsters that quickly attack you, where in classic survival horror prologue fashion, about all you can do is just run away. Where I soon learned too that you die really fucking easily. Yes! And it very quickly starts to feel quite familiar, with mechanics like item boxes, manual save points, and a lot of resource management, using that combination of fixed and panning camera angles. There's some great lighting effects here too, especially when you're walking around with a flare, which is about the only portable light source that you got. And it also uses classic tank controls, along with your character dying really fucking easily, as previously mentioned. Yes! There's only 2 weapons currently in the demo, a pistol and then what's more or less a shotgun, with the pistol able to be manually aimed with a laser pointer, which seems to increase the chance of a critical hit. Whereas the shotgun seems to almost instantly always kill the standard enemies in a single hit. All backed up with some pretty satisfying sound work, making the impacts feel really crunchy and heavy. The most interesting feature though this one adds in is the ability to kick, which you use a couple of times here to get through wonky doors, but can be also used to kick and stun enemies, giving you ample time to haul ass or just shoot them in the face. And while those fixed camera angles can sometimes make it hard to judge how close you are, this kick move really does become laughably overpowered against these basic enemies. Still though, that sense of unease in this one is really good, and there's definitely something inherently unsettling about being trapped in a hellhole under the ocean. Kinda like how inherently unsettling it is when you're walking around in socks that have got a wet spot on them. It does have a bit of an asset library flip feel to it though, and your character has that really weird walking animation, as if she's trying to hold in an absolute whopper. But this one still seems like it has a lot of promise, and I'm genuinely surprised that it doesn't have more of a buzz. No release date for this one either though, just a vague coming soon on the Steam store page. Next up is a game that I really didn't expect to enjoy as much as I did, and that's Iron Nest Heavy Turret Simulator. A brutal, diesel punk heavy artillery game where you dominate the battlefield through a colossal war machine, taking measurements, receiving coordinates, and unleashing devastating blows. Yeah, basically it's an alternate history game set in Spain in the 1920s where you're the lone operator of this humongous cannon, having to manage all these various features by yourself as you're given objectives over fax machine. Now, taking out your targets is simple. Firstly, you check the map and then figure out the distance and bearing by drawing a line across it. Then you select the distance on another terminal to determine the gun's elevation. After that, you rotate the shells and then load it into the cannon along with your powder charges, followed by rotating the turret so it's in the right direction before finally adjusting the gun's elevation. Then it's just a matter of pulling a few final levers, buttoning down the hatches, and bombs away. Watching your shell fly across the map in real time and then being totally confused as to how the fuck you blew up a hospital, police station, and 2 civilian buildings.
Oh, shit.
Yeah, in fact, during the mission debriefing, I was told I specifically killed 163 people and wounded a further 300. Fuck. Yeah, because as it turns out, you have to be far more precise here than I thought. And considering I hadn't been drawing my lines from the exact position on the map to where the cannon's located, I was firing those shells like I was Helen Keller. Once I'd figured that out though, the whole thing really started to click and the mechanics exponentially started making more sense. The game even specifically gives you different coloured markers for drawing on the map, along with a really intuitive feature where you can add whatever notes or bearings you need to a notepad for quick and easy reference, making it quickly become second nature in how to operate all these various bits of machinery, with it then being outright nerve-wracking as you watch those shells fly to their destination, hoping they hit their intended target and not a nearby orphanage or a pet shelter. Later missions add on things like being able to call in your own supplies through a requisition terminal, and then bunkers that can only be destroyed with armor-piercing shells. And then to top it off, the locations of your targets and their placements on the map is randomly generated every time you replay a mission, so it's always adding in a fresh new challenge. And for a game where you're just entirely controlling one large stationary object, it's kind of amazing how engrossing the whole thing is. Luckily too, this ain't one you're going to have to wait too long to play, with the full game dropping on August 7th. In fact, by the time most people are watching this, it's probably already going to be available. And I reckon you'd be hard-pressed finding any other game that makes it so much fun, letting you drop giant artillery shells on civilian buildings. Now, if I had $1 for every video game that was influenced by Parasite Eve, well, suffice to say I'd be broke as shit. In fact, I think the only game I've ever played personally that had any resemblance to it was that indie title called Wicked Seed. But there is another one in the works now with Parasite Mutant, which is so blatant they could only be bothered changing one of the words in the title. Either way though, it's pretty easy to see how much this thing has borrowed from Square's old 1998 cult classic, from the appearance of the main character alone, through to its entire combat, inventory and leveling up system, which is almost copied across verbatim. It's just that in Parasite Mutant, this is called ATC instead of ATB. Yeah, subtle. What little story there is in the demo is that you're a psionic agent named Nova, sent to a mysterious and abandoned island that's populated with monsters, trying to find out what's ultimately happened. With it having that familiar combat loop where you run around in real time, avoiding enemies while your energy charges up, before you can then perform an action, be it attacking with one of your weapons, activating one of Nova's abilities, or just using an item. And the whole thing seems to work pretty well, with it really only suck and farts if you're forced to fight in a crappy area, with this bridge in particular as an example being complete dog shit. Otherwise though, it's a pretty cool and intuitive system, and taking the extra time to explore the areas, finding chests and upgrading your gear makes a huge difference. It's a suitably dreary looking game too, with its whole anime aesthetic and this dull grey colour palette, which only became a problem at one point where I had no idea where to go next, simply because this terminal I had to interact with was barely lit up and didn't even look like I could activate it. Otherwise though, it's got a pretty cool aesthetic, and I appreciate the attention to detail too with Nova, how you can see the indents in her leg between where the tights end and the thigh begins. Yeah, I believe the term for that is skin dentation. The demo ends with a boss fight against this thing, which is pretty much just a xenomorph. And that really is my only main concern with this one, is the possible use of assets, or even worse, AI art. And while I don't really have any concrete proof of that, looking at the stuff they're using for it on Steam, for instance, it definitely has a lot of those hallmarks. Nothing else though, I've still enjoyed playing through this thing a couple of times, and it definitely feels honed overall. Again though, there's no release date, it's just listed as coming in 2026. Yeah, aren't we all? So the good news for those 12 people who actually played Parasite Eve is that finally you're getting a new game coming out that's going to appeal to you. As for when that is though, well, that's anyone's guess. Now, Phase Zero is another survival horror game that wears its influences on its sleeve, obviously this time being heavily inspired by the early Resident Evil games. In fact, when capturing footage for this one using Shadowplay, the capture folder name defaults to Biocrisis, and when you start a new game you get that very familiar ominous voiceover.
Phase Zero.
This one is set in the fictional town of Flint Peak in 1994 during the midst of a blistering snowstorm, with the demo having you play as some poor asshole waking up in a hospital that's overrun with zombies. And with no other option, he climbs out the window and makes his escape, hanging off the side of a building as he shimmies around the edge of it, then quickly finding a shotgun in the next room and putting it straight to use, making it potentially the fastest you ever get a shotgun in a survival horror game. Your goal now becomes to find a way out of the hospital, conversing with a mysterious person named Alex who's decked out in a biohazard suit.
Try to reach the exit. I'll see you there.
Wait,
With it then having all those familiar gameplay hallmarks that we're used to, like a high focus on resource management, an emphasis on avoiding enemies as opposed to taking them out, along with utilizing fixed camera angles and door transitions as you move between rooms. And it all plays and looks pretty damn good, having a really high amount of visual polish, to the point that it actually feels more like an early PS2 game as opposed to something you'd see on the PS1. There's some pretty cool sequences here too, like this bit where you need to find a spare wheel for a gurney so you can push this giant mound of mutated lard down a hallway into the MRI room, as all of these zombies burst out of the nearby rooms to attack you, before finally blatantly ignoring every safety protocol as you put this abomination through the scanner, causing the entire room to explode. After that, you go beneath the hospital into the basement, which feels like you're giving someone a colonoscopy in real time, before finally making it to the entrance of the hospital with a suitably bleak ending as you head off into the unknown. The camera zooming out to just show how serious and widespread this pandemic's become. It's dark, depressing, and hopeless. It's perfect.
I gotta tell you, it was perfect.
All up, this is definitely one of the shorter demos in the list, coming in at around 20 or so minutes. But even still, like, it's plain to see that the people working on this really know what they're doing. And despite being so short, they still give you a ranking for your performance at the end of it, along with unlocking a legs-only mode, where your character's running around without any arms. This is another one of those games that simply says it's vaguely available in 2026, but for fans of survival horror, that incredibly niche genre, this is definitely one worth putting on the wish list.
Phase Zero.
Now, the last couple of years, we've definitely seen a rise in the whole immersive sim genre, especially when it comes to indie titles, with stuff like Gloomwood, Cruelty Squad, and Fallen Aces, which just had its second episode drop. And another one of those games that I've had my eye on for a while now is RetroSpace, developed by the Wild Gentleman. In this one, you're playing as a janitor on the Aurora, a retro-futuristic space station that's ground zero for this plant-like mutation that's infected or killed off all the inhabitants, with your character coming out of stasis at the beginning of the story with little to no recollection as to what's happened, even starting off in the medical bay of the station. Classic.
Emergency alert deactivated.
You got a wrench for a melee weapon. The first door code you find is 0451, and you got to deal with an erratic, hostile AI system that attacks you on sight. Having said all of that though, RetroSpace still does feel somewhat unique. Like how you can set up electrical traps using spray bottles, you can light enemies on fire with a flare gun, or just sneak past them entirely. Enemies who all look absolutely horrifying, by the way, using basic weapons like a pistol, shotgun, and a magnum. It does, however, lack any proper onboarding with certain mechanics. I mean, for instance, I only found out on my second playthrough that you can use the wrench to smash through these metal bars. But then again, like, that's kind of the whole no hand-holding approach that these games going for. The real interesting catch with this one is how your character is swapping between different time periods. I mean, the main objective in the demo, for instance, is to find your way to a Professor Hammond's office. Hammond! All to lift a quarantine lockdown, where after you do that, the ship goes into a jump mode, sending you 37 years into the future, with the layout now being completely changed up. So I think it's going to be really interesting seeing how all of this stuff ties in to whatever decisions you make and how you interact with the environment and all these enemies. The only thing that I would point out is how the game is really fucking dark, like to the point of not even being able to see anything. And I know that that's kind of the point, you know, being a horror game and all that, and that it's trying to set the mood, but half the time you can barely even see what's happening, even with your flashlight on. Either way though, I still think that RetroSpace has a whole lot of potential, and it definitely feels lovingly made and handcrafted with some neat ideas. I mean, I like it too how every time you die and get revived, it gives you some kind of a defect, like making you vomit and choke every time you eat food, or causing you to hallucinate and see weird visions due to your schizophrenia.
Fuck!
Sadly though, no release date yet for this one either, just another vague 2026 window. Now up next is arguably the most visually interesting game on the list, and it's another survival horror title called Silver Pines. And I don't think I even need to describe it, like you can simply just watch the footage for yourself and see how creative it all looks. If I had to sum it up though, it's basically what would happen if Twin Peaks met Silent Hill 2, combined with Metroidvania gameplay, a graphic novel aesthetic, and a 2D control scheme. The story is you're playing as a private investigator named Red Walker, coming to the town of Silver Pines to track down a musician named Eddie Velvet, who's mysteriously gone missing, given the job by a shady figure you only speak to over the phone.
Find him, Walker.
With it also having an almost film noir vibe in the way you converse with certain characters, all of which is just drenched in the game's atmosphere and effortless style.
A nice bar, a quiet moment, just the two of us.
Starting off in the diner, you quickly make yourself a cup of coffee before heading off into the unknown, armed with only your wits and rugged good looks. Making your way downtown, faces pass and you're homebound, chatting to a few of the locals before you end up in a dingy back alley, getting attacked by some kind of nightmarish armless creature. Yeah, sounds familiar. A creature which is able to pursue you, seeing as the enemies in Silver Pines don't always give up the chase simply because you've left the screen.
What the hell is going on? What was that?
Also showcasing the combat where your options are limited to some very basic melee moves or simply trying to dodge and avoid the enemies entirely, seeing as your only melee weapon at this point is a barely held together box cutter. Enemies telegraph their attacks pretty blatantly here, but even still, it does take a bit of time to get the hang of things. Really just trying to figure out the best strategy against the different enemy types. You're constantly on the lookout for coins too, which can either be spent manually saving your game or buying items from vending machines like health or ammo. And you very quickly start to explore the surrounding area, eventually finding your way to the motel where Eddie's supposed to be staying, including a sequence where you gotta hop into a drained pool to find a crucial item. Yeah, again, sounds familiar. You do also get the revolver around this point too, which is far superior at killing enemies, and has to manually be reloaded round by round, making combat far more tense. And if you're savvy, you'll also find the shotgun near here too, which can then be used back near the beginning of the demo to access a few side areas. As for the demo, well, this thing comes to an end during this really surreal sequence where Red suddenly finds himself in a bar at a seemingly different point in time, watching one of Eddie's performances, which just raises more questions than it answers. Then you got a boss fight towards the end against a giant scrotum and a bunch of shadow people, before Red then makes his way onto a ferry and goes deeper into the town. So it's got quite a lot of content for a supposed demo, definitely doing its job of getting you hooked in on the final product. And while it's not entirely perfect, I think that whole 2D combat system can be pretty hit and miss. Literally, at the end of the day, it's kinda hard to not be intrigued by this thing.
What? Keep it together, Walker.
If only due to just how original it looks and feels. The good news is that we don't have to wait all that long either, seeing as it's dropping October 9th later this year. Bringing me on to the final game in the video is Sprawl Zero, which to be honest was so much fun to play through that it's pretty much what motivated me to make this entire video. Now I'll be honest, I didn't really vibe with the first Sprawl. I think I played it for a grand total of 30 minutes. With Zero though, I knew within about 30 seconds that this was going to be something that I'd really dig. Now the premise here is that in the future, after endless wars, natural disasters, and rampant disease, humanity has been left paralyzed and fractured, with the remaining survivors consumed by paranoia. And the world is broken, blindly maintaining the facade of a functioning society. So, yeah, just like real life. Either way, you're playing as the enhanced super soldier named 5, no doubt coming from the same production line as the character 7 you played as in the first game. And yeah, what a name. 7.
It's awful, I hate it!
Well, that's the name!
Anyway, your first mission requires you to go deep into the city and take out a bunch of rebels. Rebels which I think are very obviously going to become your allies at some point in the story. At least, that's what I expect is going to happen if games like Haze have taught me anything.
Remember your promise to Merino!
Unlike the first game, which had a high focus on things like wall running and parkour style moves, the gameplay in Sprawl is more just about the satisfying and meaty combat. All based around your gravity gloves, which not only give you a seriously powerful melee attack, but also lets you pick up pretty much everything that's not nailed down, like explosive barrels or propane tanks, and throw them back at enemies. It's like, imagine being able to wear the grav gun from Half-Life 2 on your hands, and that's kind of the idea. More than that though, you can also pick up weapons from a distance, with the game encouraging you to quickly swap between them, given that the only ammo you get is whatever is loaded into the current gun that you've picked up. But then even when a weapon's out of ammo, it's still got a use because you can throw them at enemies to temporarily stun them. Where you quickly get into a rhythm of swapping between guns on the fly, all of which have different tiers of quality, and some of which are super gnarly, like this thermal saw thing that just shreds through everything in a single hit. And it's all just got this really great early 2000s Xbox and PS2 vibe, particularly with the way the game looks visually. Kinda like a combination between the environments in Half-Life 2, along with the enemy designs and aesthetics of an early Bungie game. You even get pursued by a gunship for a short stint. Combined with a purposefully flat color palette that looks like something out of the Killzone series, with a really kick-ass DMB soundtrack to back it all up. Early on, you get a bullet time upgrade that makes your bullets home in on enemies when it's activated, along with a shield that can catch projectiles and launch them back at enemies. So the game clearly wants you to feel like a badass, and yeah, it definitely achieves that. With checkpoints giving you a full health and energy recharge, so you can go into the next fight at your absolute peak. Overall, there's only 2 levels in the demo that last no longer than like 20 minutes, but this thing is infinitely replayable, simply because it gives you so much freedom in being able to tackle all of these little combat scenarios. My only concern is that gonna get boring at some point?
No!
Sadly though, we might be waiting a fair while here to have that question answered, considering this thing doesn't even have any kind of release date on it, just an even more vague coming soon. But out of everything in this video, this right here is probably the one I want to play the most. Well, that about wraps it up for the video, and hopefully I managed to put at least one new game on someone's wishlist today. If I missed out on something you think deserves a shout, well, then let me know in the comments below, as I spend an unhealthy amount of time reading through those, and I'm definitely going to notice it. Either way, thanks for watching.